Scientists have been tracking something terrifying along the San Andreas Fault. The ground is moving. Slowly, but constantly. California is literally sliding toward the Pacific Ocean at 2 inches per year. Most people ignore this. But what they don't know is that one day, that slow creep could become a catastrophic break. One earthquake, one fracture. And 40 million people wake up on an island drifting into the ocean. This isn't some disaster movie plot. The San Andreas Fault is real. It runs 800 miles through California, and it's been building pressure for over a century. Geologists know it's going to rupture. The question isn't if, it's when. And what happens if that rupture doesn't just shake the ground, but actually tears California away from the rest of America? What do you think happens to Los Angeles, San Francisco, San Diego, and every city in between when the ground beneath them literally splits apart? Let's talk about what the San Andreas Fault actually is. It's not just a crack in the ground. It's a boundary between two massive tectonic plates, the Pacific Plate and the North American Plate. These plates are constantly grinding against each other, trying to move in opposite directions. The Pacific Plate wants to slide northwest. The North American Plate wants to stay put. For now, friction holds them together. But that friction is building pressure. Enormous, unimaginable pressure. And when that pressure finally releases, the results are catastrophic. Now imagine this scenario. It's a Tuesday morning. People are commuting to work in Los Angeles. Traffic is terrible, like always. Coffee shops are packed. Kids are in school, everything seems normal. Then without warning, the ground starts shaking. Not the usual California tremor that people shrug off. This is different. This is violent. Buildings sway so hard that windows explode outward, raining glass onto the streets below. Highways buckle and twist like ribbons. Bridges collapse, sending cars plunging into the water below. And then the unthinkable happens. The shaking doesn't stop, it intensifies. Because this isn't just an earthquake. This is the big one that scientists have warned about for decades, but worse, much worse. What do you think people do in those first few seconds? Some drop to the ground, covering their heads. Others run, not knowing where they're going, just trying to escape the chaos. Parents scream for their children. The noise is deafening. Car alarms, sirens, buildings crumbling, people shouting. And underneath it all, a deep, terrible groaning sound coming from the earth itself. The fault isn't just slipping. It's tearing open. A massive fracture races along the entire length of California at thousands of miles per hour, splitting the state in two. Within minutes, the coastline begins to separate. Not slowly, not over years. This happens fast. The Pacific Plate, suddenly released from its friction lock, lurches violently. California, everything west of the San Andreas Fault, starts breaking away from the mainland. The ground opens up into a chasm hundreds of feet wide. Water from underground aquifers erupts like geysers. Gas lines rupture, igniting massive fireballs across cities. Power lines snap, plunging entire regions into darkness. And the ocean, sensing an opportunity, begins rushing in to fill the gap. What do you think it looks like from above? Imagine satellite footage showing the entire western edge of California literally detaching from North America. A jagged wound opens across the landscape, swallowing highways, neighborhoods, farmland. The Pacific Ocean floods into the gap with terrifying speed, turning what was solid ground into a churning, violent waterway. Cities that were once connected to the mainland are now on an island with 40 million terrified people trapped on it. Let's focus on Los Angeles for a moment. The city sits right on top of multiple fault lines. When the San Andreas ruptures completely, LA doesn't just shake. It fractures from within. Skyscrapers, even the earthquake-resistant ones, can't handle this level of violence. Steel frames twist and snap. Concrete crumbles. Buildings that took years to construct collapse in seconds. What do you think happens to the people inside? Those near windows are thrown out by the force of the shaking. Those in stairwells are crushed when floors pancake on top of each other. Elevators plummet down shafts, cables severed by the twisting buildings. Thousands die before they even understand what's happening. But the earthquake is just the beginning. As California separates from the mainland, something even more terrifying occurs. The sudden displacement of land triggers massive tsunamis. Walls of water 50 feet high race toward the newly formed coastline on both sides. The waves hit what's left of coastal cities with the force of a freight train. San Francisco's waterfront is obliterated. Santa Monica Pier is ripped from its foundation and dragged out to sea. Boats and harbors are tossed inland like toys. Buildings that survived the earthquake are now smashed by millions of tons of water. What do you think the people who survived the initial quake do now? They run, they climb, they search for higher ground. But where do you go when your entire state is breaking apart? Highways that led east, back to the safety of the mainland, are gone. Bridges have collapsed. The gap between California and the rest of America is now a churning, deadly channel of water. There's no escape. People trapped in LA, San Francisco, San Diego, they're stuck on what has become the world's largest and most populated island. An island that's still shaking, still fracturing, still sinking, because here's something most people don't realize. When a landmass suddenly breaks away like this, it doesn't just float peacefully. The violence of the separation destabilizes everything. Aftershocks, each nearly as powerful as the original quake, continue for days. Buildings that were barely standing collapse in the aftershocks. Fires rage out of control because water mains are destroyed. Hospitals are overflowing with casualties, but most hospitals have collapsed themselves. What do you think doctors and nurses do when their hospital crumbles around them, while they trying to save lives? They make impossible choices. Who gets help? Who doesn't? Because there simply aren't enough resources. Let's talk about resources. California, now an island, has just lost its connection to the entire United States supply chain. No trucks can drive in with food. No trains can deliver supplies. Airports, if any are still functional, have runways cracked and buckled. What do you think happens when 40 million people realize that no help is coming? That grocery stores won't be restocked? That gas stations are empty? That pharmacies have no medicine? Panic spreads faster than the fires. Looting begins almost immediately. People break into stores, taking whatever they can carry. Some are just trying to survive. Others are taking advantage of the chaos. Within 48 hours, the death toll reaches hundreds of thousands. Collapsed buildings, tsunami victims, fires, lack of medical care. But the real killer is what comes next: starvation. California produces a lot of food, sure, but it also imports massive amounts. And now, nothing is coming in. The population of this new island is entirely cut off. What do you think people eat when the food runs out? They raid homes. They fight over scraps. Neighbors turn on neighbors. Community centers try to organize rationing, but there's not enough to ration. People start dying not from the disaster itself, but from hunger. And then there's water. California was already facing water shortages before this happened. Now, the infrastructure is destroyed. Treatment plants are offline. The aqueducts that brought water from the Colorado River and Northern California are severed, torn apart by the fault rupture. What do you think 40 million people do when they have no clean water? They drink from contaminated sources. Rivers polluted with debris and chemicals. Ocean water that makes them sicker. Disease spreads rapidly. Cholera, dysentery, infections from untreated wounds. Hospitals are gone. Antibiotics are gone. People die from illnesses that would have been easily treatable just days before. Let's not forget about the rest of America. The eastern side of the fault, the mainland, isn't unscathed. The earthquake was felt as far as Nevada, Arizona, and Oregon. Cities near the fault line, like Bakersfield and Palmdale, are completely destroyed. But the real problem for the mainland is the sudden loss of California. Economically, California was the fifth largest economy in the world. Tech companies, entertainment industry, agriculture, ports, all of it gone in an instant. The stock market crashes. Millions of jobs disappear overnight. The entire American economy teeters on the edge of collapse. What do you think the federal government does? Emergency response teams are mobilized. But how do you rescue 40 million people trapped on an island that's still experiencing violent aftershocks? The Navy tries to send ships, but the waters are treacherous. Debris fields stretch for miles. Rescue helicopters attempt to land, but where? Every flat surface is covered in rubble. And even if they could evacuate people, where would they go? Refugee camps? How do you house 40 million displaced Americans? The logistics are impossible. Meanwhile, back on the island, society is breaking down completely. Within a week, organized government ceases to exist. Police and military personnel are either dead, missing, or focused on saving their own families. Warlords and gangs take control of neighborhoods, hoarding resources and ruling through violence. What do you think life looks like for the average person now? Constant fear, hiding, scrounging for food and water, avoiding the groups of armed men roaming the streets. This isn't America anymore. This is survival of the fittest. And here's the truly horrifying part. This scenario, while extreme, isn't entirely impossible. The San Andreas Fault will rupture again. Scientists agree on this. When it does, the earthquake will be catastrophic, likely magnitude 8 or higher. Now, will California actually break off and become an island? Probably not in one event. The geological forces required for that are almost unimaginable. But the fault is moving. California is drifting. Over millions of years, it will separate. The question is whether a single catastrophic event could accelerate that process dramatically. Most scientists say no. But they also said a magnitude 9 earthquake in Japan was unlikely, until it happened. So what would you do? If you lived in California and you felt the ground start shaking, and it didn't stop, and you watched the land around you start to crack and separate, what would your plan be? Do you have supplies? Do you have a way to get to safety? Or would you be one of the millions caught in the chaos, desperately trying to survive as your entire world literally falls apart beneath your feet? If this scenario terrified you, and honestly it should, leave a comment below telling me what you think would be the worst part. The earthquake, the tsunamis, the starvation. And if you want more terrifying disaster scenarios that explore America's greatest threats, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. This is America Doom, where we dive deep into the catastrophes that could reshape or destroy the United States. Drop a like if this made you rethink living near a fault line, and I'll see you in the next one. Stay prepared, because the ground beneath California is moving right now, and one day it's going to break.